The Grand Assembly Hall stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystal floor. Thousands of alien beings filled the circular chamber, their forms ranging from crystalline entities that hummed with inner light to massive creatures that looked like living mountains. At the center stood a small delegation of humans looking incredibly tiny compared to the vast gathering around them. Jiho Park stood at the front of the human group. His hands were clasped behind his back, trying to hide the slight tremor in his fingers. Next to him, Nari Kim held a data tablet containing every argument, every piece of evidence, every reason why humanity deserved a place in the galactic community. They had practiced their presentation for months. They had prepared for difficult questions. They had not prepared for what was coming. The council speaker, an entity named Velmoth, rose from the central platform. Its body seemed to be made of flowing liquid metal, constantly shifting and reforming. When it spoke, the words appeared directly in everyone's mind, translated instantly into their native language. The voice was cold and final. The Galactic Council has reviewed humanity's application for membership. We have studied your history, your culture, your technological development, and your nature. After careful consideration by all 743 member species, we have reached a unanimous decision. Jiho felt his heart pounding. Unanimous could be good. It meant everyone agreed. He allowed himself a moment of hope. Humanity is denied entry into the Galactic Council. Furthermore, your species is hereby quarantined to your home solar system. A quantum barrier will be erected around Sol within 1 standard cycle. You are forbidden from leaving your star system or attempting contact with any council species. This decision is final and cannot be appealed. The words hit Jiho like physical blows. Around him, the other human delegates stood frozen in shock. In the vast chamber, thousands of aliens remained silent. The only sound was the soft humming of the translation devices. Nari found her voice first. Why? The word came out barely above a whisper, but in the perfect acoustics of the hall, everyone heard it. We've eliminated war on our planet. We've unified our governments. We've solved poverty and hunger. What more do you want from us? Another council member spoke, this one looking like a massive tree with eyes scattered across its trunk. Your species achieved spaceflight only 200 years ago. In that time, you have expanded aggressively, consumed resources at an alarming rate, and demonstrated patterns of behavior that concern us deeply. Patterns? Jiho stepped forward. What patterns? We've followed every guideline you gave us. We've reformed our society based on council principles. Velmoth's form rippled. Your history shows continuous warfare spanning thousands of years. You have developed weapons capable of destroying your own planet multiple times. Your literature and entertainment glorify violence and conflict. Even your children's stories involve battles and conquest. That's our past, Jiho protested. Every species has a violent past. You're judging us for things that happened centuries ago. No, said a third council member, a being that looked like a floating cluster of geometric shapes. We are judging you for what you are. Your warriors train even in peacetime. Your scientists develop new weapons even when you have no enemies. Your people seek challenges and dangers for recreation. You climb mountains that could kill you. You dive into deep oceans. You race vehicles at deadly speeds for entertainment. That's called exploration and adventure, Nari said, her voice rising with frustration. That's how we learn and grow. That, Velmoth said, is why you are dangerous. You do not understand fear the way civilized species do. You see danger and run toward it. You face impossible odds and try anyway. This makes you unpredictable. This makes you a threat. Jiho looked around the massive hall. He noticed something strange. Many of the younger aliens, those who appeared to be guards or junior diplomats, were staring at the humans with wide eyes. It wasn't disgust in their expressions. It was fear. Pure, instinctive fear. We came here in peace, Jiho said quietly. We asked to join you. We wanted to learn from you. And that is another concern, said the tree-like being. You learn too quickly. Your technological advancement is unprecedented. It took the Velkari Empire 10,000 years to develop faster than light travel. You did it in 200. You studied our mathematics for 50 years and found new theorems we never discovered. This rate of progress is abnormal. It is dangerous. So you're punishing us for being good learners? Nari's voice was thick with anger now. We are protecting the galaxy, Velmoth said. The barrier around your system will be permanent. You will have access to your star, your planets, and your asteroid belt. That should be sufficient for your species to exist peacefully. You're locking us in a cage, Jiho said. We are keeping the galaxy safe from an unpredictable element. The decision is made. You have 1 cycle to return all human vessels and personnel to Sol system. After that, the barrier activates. Any human ship caught outside will be destroyed. This audience is concluded. The council members began to turn away, dismissing the humans as if they were nothing. Jiho stood there, his mind racing. 50 years of diplomatic work, decades of proving humanity's worth, all rejected in minutes. As the human delegation turned to leave, Jiho noticed an older alien watching them. This one looked almost reptilian, with scales that shimmered in rainbow colors. It approached slowly, cautiously, as if the humans might attack. "I voted against you," the alien said quietly, "but not because I think you are evil. I voted against you because I am afraid. My people have existed for 50,000 years by being cautious, by avoiding risks, by following rules. Your people are 3,000 years old, and you have already mastered nuclear fusion, genetic engineering, and quantum mechanics. You scare us, not because you are violent, because you never stop trying." The alien looked directly into Jiho's eyes. "That is both your greatest strength and why you can never be allowed to join us. A species that never gives up is a species that cannot be controlled, and the Council fears what it cannot control." Then the alien turned and walked away, leaving the humans alone in the massive chamber. The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks. The human delegation sat in silence most of the time. When they finally entered orbit around their blue and green homeworld, Jiho looked down at the planet that birthed humanity and felt something shift inside him. They had tried to join the galactic community. They had been rejected. They had been judged as too dangerous, too unpredictable, too ambitious. The galaxy wanted to lock them away and forget about them. Fine. Jiho activated his communicator and connected to the military headquarters in Seoul. General Taeyang Choi appeared on the screen, his weathered face showing no surprise at the news. He had predicted this outcome. "They rejected us," Jiho said simply. "I know," Taeyang replied. "I've been monitoring the broadcasts. The barrier goes up in a week. What do we do now?" The general smiled, and it was not a pleasant smile. Now we stop trying to be what they want us to be. They called us dangerous. They said we advanced too quickly. They said we never stopped trying. They meant all of that as criticism." "And?" Jiho asked. "And they just gave us 100 years of isolation to prove them right. They wanted to lock us in, so let's use that time. Let's build. Let's advance. Let's become exactly what they feared. Because when we come out of this cage, I want to make sure they regret ever putting us in it." Jiho looked down at Earth again. Somewhere down there, 10 billion humans were learning they had been cast out by the galaxy. Some would despair. Some would rage. But humanity had survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and near extinction. They would survive this too, and they would remember who locked the door. "Send the message to all nations," Jiho said. "Tell them what happened. Tell them we have 100 years, and tell them to get to work." The barrier activated 1 week later. It shimmered around the Sol system like a wall of crystalline energy, cutting humanity off from the stars. The galaxy moved on, forgetting about the violent, unpredictable species locked away in their corner of space. That was their first mistake. 100 years passed behind the barrier. From outside, the Sol system looked peaceful and quiet, the quantum wall shimmering steadily around it. The Galactic Council rarely mentioned humanity anymore. They had moved on to other matters, other concerns, other problems. Inside that barrier, however, humanity had not been idle. Hana Song stood in the observation deck of Olympus Station, orbiting Mars. She was 73 years old now, her hair completely white, her face lined with decades of work. As Earth's chief science advisor, she had witnessed the complete transformation of human civilization. Below her, Mars glowed red, but not from rust anymore. Lights covered the surface in a sprawling network of cities and installations. The barren planet had become humanity's forge. "Dr. Song, the test results are ready," said a younger scientist approaching with a data pad. His name was Ki-hoon, one of the new generation born after the quarantine began. He had never seen an alien in person. He had never known a time when humanity was not alone. Hana took the pad and reviewed the numbers. Her eyes widened. "These readings, they're stable. Completely stable. The new FTL drive works, and it operates on completely different principles than Council technology. We didn't copy their designs. We couldn't, because they never shared them with us. So we figured it out ourselves. Hana allowed herself a rare smile. When the barrier first appeared, humanity's scientists had studied it obsessively. They learned more about quantum mechanics and dimensional physics from analyzing their prison than they ever would have learned from council databases. Necessity had driven innovation in ways that peace never could. She looked out at the massive shipyards orbiting Mars. Hundreds of vessels were under construction, their hulls gleaming in the reflected light of the sun. Each ship represented a new design philosophy, developed without alien influence. They were uniquely human creations built by a species that had been told to stay home. "How many ships are operational now?" Hana asked. 3,000 combat vessels, 500 exploration ships, and over 10,000 support craft. The lunar yards are producing 2 new ships every day. The asteroid belt facilities are even faster. 3,000 warships. Hana remembered when humanity had celebrated building their first interplanetary vessel. That was 150 years ago before first contact. Now they built fleets. And the crews? "We have more volunteers than ships. Everyone wants to serve, the new generation especially." Ki-hoon paused. "Dr. Song, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Why are we building warships? Who are we planning to fight?" Hana turned to face the young man. "The galaxy locked us away because they feared we were too dangerous. But during our brief time with them, I noticed something. They were afraid of many things. They had weapons on their stations. They had military vessels. Species that claim to be peaceful do not arm themselves so heavily unless they have something to fear. You think there's a threat they didn't tell us about? I think the Council is not as stable as they pretended to be. And I think when this barrier eventually fails, we need to be ready for whatever is out there." Ki-hoon nodded slowly. "The barrier will fail?" "Everything fails eventually. Quantum decay is inevitable. My calculations suggest we have maybe 10 more years before it collapses naturally. And we'll be ready. We'll be more than ready. We'll be stronger than we've ever been." Hana moved to another window, this one showing Earth. The blue planet looked peaceful from here, but she knew the truth. Every continent had been transformed. Cities now reached kilometers into the sky. Underground complexes stretched deep into the planet's crust. Humanity had not just survived their isolation. They had thrived. The shame of rejection had been replaced by determination. The first generation had been angry, desperate to prove themselves. The second generation, Ki-hoon's generation, was different. They were not angry. They were patient. They had been raised on stories of how the galaxy treated humanity, and they remembered. They would always remember. On the other side of the system, Doyen Lee commanded the First Fleet from his flagship, the Indomitable. He was younger than Hana, only 52, but he had trained his entire life for this moment. His fleet consisted of 300 of humanity's newest vessels, each one a masterpiece of engineering. "Admiral, we're receiving the drill coordinates," said his tactical officer, a sharp woman named Yoonji. "Begin the exercise," Doyen ordered. The fleet moved as one, executing maneuvers that would have been impossible for the old generation of ships. They used gravity assists from Jupiter's moons, threading through asteroid fields at speeds that would terrify Council pilots. Human vessels were built differently than alien ships. They accelerated harder, turned faster, and could withstand greater stress. Because humanity had learned something important. In their brief contact with the galaxy, they had seen Council ships. They had studied alien tactics, and they had realized that every Council species fought the same way. They used shields and energy weapons. They preferred long-range engagements. They followed predictable patterns. Humanity decided to do everything differently. Their ships had minimal shields but heavy armor. They carried kinetic weapons, missiles, and nuclear devices alongside energy weapons. They trained for close-range combat, for boarding actions, for scenarios that Council species considered too dangerous. And they trained constantly. "Target acquired," Yoonji reported. "Drone swarm deployed." Automated drones, each the size of a car, swarmed toward a simulated enemy position. They moved unpredictably, changing course randomly to avoid defensive fire. Some carried explosives. Others had electronic warfare packages. A few were just decoys. The enemy simulation couldn't track them all. Direct hit. "Exercise complete," Doyen nodded. "Good, now run it again, but this time assume we're outnumbered 5-1. "Sir, we've already run that scenario." "Then we run it again. And again. Until we can do it in our sleep." The crew obeyed without question. They had all grown up hearing the same stories. Stories of how humanity was rejected, how they were called too violent, too unpredictable, too dangerous. Most species would have taken that as an insult. Humanity took it as a challenge. Back on Earth, in a secure bunker beneath Seoul, General Taeyang Choi reviewed reports from across the solar system. He was old now, nearly 90, but his mind was still sharp. He had spent a century preparing for the day the barrier would fall. General, we have confirmation from the Science Division. Quantum decay is accelerating. The barrier will fail within 10 years. Taeyang nodded slowly. And our status? All major construction projects are ahead of schedule. Fleet strength exceeds projections. Resource stockpiles are at maximum. Technologically, we've achieved things the Council said were impossible. We're ready. No, Taeyang said quietly. We're never ready. But we're as prepared as we can be. He pulled up a holographic display showing the entire solar system. Every planet, every moon, every significant asteroid was marked with installations. Humanity had turned their prison into a fortress. And more importantly, they had developed technologies the Council had never seen. The FTL drive that worked on different principles, weapons that didn't rely on energy shields, tactics developed through study of human history, not alien tradition. Humanity had been forced to innovate alone, and that isolation had made them creative in ways the galaxy would not expect. What do you think we'll find when the barrier falls? Asked a younger officer. Taeyang thought about that question. I think we'll find that the galaxy is not as safe as they claimed. The Council was afraid of us, but they weren't afraid because they were strong. They were afraid because they knew they were weak. And what will we do? We'll do what we've always done. We'll survive. We'll adapt. And we'll show them exactly what they created when they locked us away. The years continued to pass. Mars completed its terraforming project, becoming the second world where humans could breathe freely. The asteroid belt was completely claimed and converted into industrial complexes. Europa and Titan housed research stations that pushed the boundaries of science. Venus, despite its hellish conditions, supported mining operations in its atmosphere. Humanity spread throughout their solar system like they had spread across Earth thousands of years before. The barrier that was meant to contain them only focused their expansion inward, making them stronger rather than weaker. And then, 107 years after it appeared, the barrier flickered. Hana Song was long dead by then, but her successor, a brilliant physicist named Minho, detected the fluctuation immediately. All stations, we have quantum instability in the barrier. This is not a drill. Across the solar system, humanity responded instantly. Fleets moved to ready positions. Defense networks activated. Communications channels opened. They had planned for this moment for over a century. The barrier flickered again, stronger this time. And then, like a soap bubble popping, it simply ceased to exist. After 107 years, Sol System was open to the galaxy once more. Doyen Lee, now an admiral commanding the entire First Fleet, stared at the empty space where the barrier had been. All ships, stand ready. Launch reconnaissance drones. Find out what's changed out there. The drones shot forward, entering interstellar space for the first time in a century. They transmitted data back to the fleet. Star charts, energy readings. The human fleet moved through space with careful precision. Captain Mira Bay commanded the exploration vessel Dauntless, a ship designed for long-range reconnaissance. Her crew of 80 humans had trained for years, but none of them had ever seen an alien in person. They knew the galaxy only through old records and stories. Captain, we're approaching Rigel Prime, reported her navigation officer Sungmin. The old Council outpost should be coming into sensor range. Mira studied the display screens. Rigel Prime had been one of the Council's regional headquarters, a massive station housing thousands of aliens from dozens of species. It should have been broadcasting signals showing life, bustling with activity. Instead, her sensors showed nothing but silence. Take us in slowly. Battle stations, but keep weapons powered down. Let's not start a war on our first day back. The Dauntless glided forward and Rigel Prime came into view. Mira felt her breath catch in her throat. The station was destroyed, not damaged. Not abandoned, destroyed. Massive sections of the structure had been torn open. Debris floated in clouds around the station. Burn marks scarred the hull, but they were not from any weapons Mira recognized. The damage looked almost organic, as if something had eaten through the metal. Life signs? She asked quietly. None, Captain. The station is dead. Take us closer. I want to see what did this. The Dauntless approached carefully, its cameras recording everything. As they got closer, Mira could see bodies floating in the vacuum. Aliens of species she recognized from the old records. They had not died quickly or peacefully. "Captain, I'm detecting an active data core in the central section. It might have information about what happened here. Can we access it remotely?" "Negative. We'll need to board the station." Mira made the decision quickly. "Prep a team. I'm going personally. Sungmin, you have command while I'm gone." 20 minutes later, Mira and 5 crew members entered the dead station through a torn airlock. Their magnetic boots kept them anchored to the floor as they moved through corridors lit only by emergency lighting. Bodies floated past them. Aliens she had only seen in pictures, now dead and frozen. "This is horrible," whispered Yuna, their medical officer. "What could do this?" "Keep moving," Mira ordered. "Stay alert." They reached the data core without incident. The room was intact, protected by heavy blast doors that had held against whatever destroyed the rest of the station. The computers were still running on backup power. "Accessing now," said their tech specialist Jeho. His fingers moved quickly across the alien interface. Humans had studied Council technology extensively during their isolation, even without access to new systems. "Got it, downloading all available data. How long?" 10 minutes for a full download. "Captain, you should see this." Jeho pulled up a video file. The screen showed the station's operations center, bustling with activity. Then alarms started blaring. Aliens ran in every direction, panic on their faces. The camera shook as something impacted the station. Then the feed showed the source of the attack, ships. But not like any ships Mira had ever seen. They looked organic, like they had been grown rather than built. Their hulls pulsed with sickly bioluminescence. As Mira watched, one of the ships fired a weapon that looked like a stream of living matter. It struck a council vessel and the ship simply dissolved, its hull corrupting and breaking apart in seconds. "What are those things?" Yuna asked. "No idea. But they're not council species." The video continued. The defense fleet tried to fight back, but they were overwhelmed. There were simply too many of the organic ships, and council weapons seemed to barely hurt them. The station's shields held for a while, then failed. The last thing the camera recorded was something boarding the station, something that moved like liquid shadow. Then the feed cut to black. "Get that download finished. We need to leave now." They returned to the Dauntless quickly, carrying the data core with them. As soon as the airlock sealed, Mira ordered full burn away from the station. "Sungmin, send a priority message to the fleet. We have a situation." Back in Sol System, the military leadership reviewed the data from Rigel Prime. Admiral Doyen Lee watched the video 3 times, his expression growing darker with each viewing. "How old is this footage?" he asked. 30 years, sir. Whatever attacked that station did it decades ago. And we heard nothing because of the barrier. The galaxy has been under attack for 30 years and we never knew." Doyen clenched his fists. "What else does the data contain?" "Lots of information, sir. It appears these attackers are called the Devourers. They came from outside the galaxy approximately 50 years ago. The Council tried to stop them. They failed. Where's the Council now?" "Unknown. But we're detecting distress signals from multiple systems. Some are old, some are recent. The war is still happening." Doyen made his decision. "Send the 2nd and 3rd fleets to investigate the nearest distress signals. The 1st fleet comes with me. We're going hunting." 3 days later, Captain Junho Kang commanded the destroyer Valiant when they detected a battle in progress. His tactical display showed 3 Council warships trying to fight off 12 Devourer vessels. "Those are Council ships," said his weapons officer Bora. "They're getting destroyed." Junho watched the battle unfold. The Council ships were larger than the Devourer vessels, but they were losing badly. Their energy weapons seemed to have minimal effect on the organic hulls of the enemy. One Council ship exploded as Junho watched. "Sir, orders?" Junho thought about the rejection. He thought about humanity being locked away for a century. He thought about how the Council had called them too dangerous, too violent, too unpredictable. And he thought about how right now, somewhere on those dying ships, aliens were probably praying for a miracle. "Battle stations. All weapons hot. We're going in." "Sir, we're 1 ship against 12. "Yes, which means they won't expect us to attack. Charge the main railgun. Load nuclear-tipped missiles. And someone play some music over the combat channel. Let's show them what dangerous looks like." The Valiant accelerated toward the battle at speeds no Council ship would dare attempt. Junio targeted the closest Devourer vessel and fired the railgun. The projectile, moving at a significant fraction of light speed, punched through the organic ship like it was made of paper. The vessel exploded. "Missile away!" The nuclear-tipped missile streaked toward a cluster of Devourer ships. They tried to shoot it down, but it was too fast, too small, too erratic in its flight path. It detonated between 3 enemy vessels. The nuclear fireball consumed them all. 4 down. 8 to go. They're turning toward us. Good. That means they're not shooting the Council ships anymore. Evasive pattern Gamma. Return fire with all conventional weapons. The Valiant danced through space, twisting and turning in ways that would have torn apart a Council vessel. Devourer weapons fire missed by meters as Junho piloted the ship personally, using instincts developed from thousands of hours in simulation. Another missile. Target the big one. Sir, we're getting dangerously close. That's the idea. Fire. The Valiant closed to point-blank range before releasing the missile. At this distance, the Devourer ship couldn't miss, but neither could the human vessel. The missile impacted directly into what looked like the enemy's central mass. The explosion was massive, but Devourer return fire struck the Valiant's armor. Alarms blared as hull sections buckled. The organic weapons were trying to corrupt the ship's systems. Damage report. Hull breaches on decks 3 and 4. The corruption is spreading. Seal those sections. Vent them to space if you have to. Bora, keep firing. The remaining Devourer ships were confused. They had faced Council vessels that relied on shields and retreated when damaged. The Valiant did neither. It kept charging forward, kept firing, kept fighting even as it took damage. Railgun recharged, firing! Another Devourer ship died. Then another. The remaining 4 suddenly broke formation and retreated, fleeing into FTL. They had never seen tactics like this. They had never fought an enemy that simply refused to stop. Junio allowed himself to breathe. Status? We lost 3 crew members when we vented those sections. Corruption stopped before it reached critical systems. We can still fight, but we need repairs. The Council ships? 2 survived. They're hailing us. Put them through. The screen showed an alien face. It looked insect-like with multiple eyes and mandibles. It spoke in a clicking language that the ship's computer translated in real time. Human vessel, this is Captain Thelvar of the Council Defense Force. You saved us. We did not expect help. We thought all nearby systems were lost. Junho leaned back in his chair. We're new here. Or, well, we're back. It's complicated. You are from Sol System, the quarantine species, that's right, though the barrier is gone now. We came out and found this mess. What are those things? The Devourers. They arrived 50 years ago from dark space. We have been fighting them ever since. We are losing. Where's the main Council fleet? Where's your government? Thelvar's eyes seemed to dim. Scattered, broken. We lost our central command 20 years ago. Each species now fights independently. We try to coordinate, but we are not winning this war. Junho process. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was held in a temporary facility on a heavily defended world. The grand chamber where humanity had been rejected no longer existed. The Devourers had destroyed it 15 years ago. Now the Council met in a converted military bunker, and only 200 species remained where once there had been 700. High Counselor Ventak called the session to order, the liquid metal being looked diminished somehow, as if the years of war had worn it down. Around the circular chamber, representatives from surviving species waited nervously. They all knew why this emergency session had been called. We have confirmed reports, Ventak announced. The quarantine barrier around Sol System has failed. The humans are free. Moreover, they have engaged Devourer forces and achieved victory. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. A crystalline entity spoke up. How is that possible? One human ship defeated multiple Devourer vessels? The report comes from Captain Thelvar, who witnessed the engagement personally. The human vessel used tactics we have never seen. Kinetic weapons, nuclear devices, close-range combat. They fought like warriors, finished another counselor, one of the ancient tree-like beings, like the species we said was too violent for civilized space. The irony was not lost on anyone in the chamber. For 50 years they had struggled against the Devourers using civilized tactics, following rules of engagement, fighting the way proper species were supposed to fight. And they had lost again and again. We need their help, said a representative from a species that looked like floating energy patterns. Our forces are depleted. Morale is broken. If humans can defeat devourer forces, we need them in this war. Agreed, Ventok said. Which brings us to the question, how do we approach them? A reptilian counselor spoke up, its scales gleaming in the dim light. We offer them a contract. Pay them as mercenaries. Keep it transactional. That way we maintain our dignity while obtaining their assistance. Dignity? The tree being's voice was sharp. We rejected them. We imprisoned them. We called them unfit for civilized company, and now we want to hire them like common soldiers? That is not dignity. That is cowardice. What would you suggest? Full membership, complete recognition, and an apology. The chamber erupted in argument. Some species supported the idea. Others found it unthinkable. The debate raged for hours, and finally, Ventok called for a vote. The result was predictable. The council would extend an offer of employment to humanity as independent contractors. No membership. No apology, just payment for services rendered. 3 days later, Ambassador Sumin Han received the council's offer in her office aboard the diplomatic vessel, stationed at the edge of council space. She was young, only 35, part of the generation born after the quarantine. She had never experienced the rejection personally, but she had grown up hearing the stories. She read the offer carefully. Then she read it again. Then she started laughing. Her aide, Kyung-ho, looked concerned. Ambassador? They want to hire us. Like we're some kind of mercenary company. They want our soldiers to die fighting their war, but they still won't recognize us as equals. She stood up and activated the communication system. Get me a direct channel to the council. Broadcast it everywhere. I want every species in the galaxy to hear this. Ambassador, are you sure? Absolutely sure. Open the channel. The holographic projection appeared, showing the council chamber. Hundreds of alien faces looked at her, waiting for her response. Sumin smiled, and it was not a nice smile. Honorable counselors, I have reviewed your generous offer. Your proposal to hire humanity as independent contractors to fight in your war. To risk our lives, to bleed for your worlds, but without recognition or respect. She paused. My answer is no. Ventok's form rippled with what might have been surprise. Ambassador, perhaps you do not understand the compensation we are offering. Oh, I understand perfectly. You want our warriors, but not our company. You want our sacrifice, but not our friendship. You want us to be tools, not people. So let me make a counteroffer. She pulled up a holographic document and transmitted it to every screen in the council chamber. Full membership in the Galactic Council with all rights and privileges, voting rights equal to any other species, access to all council technology and databases, and a formal public apology for the unjust quarantine of humanity. Sumin leaned forward. That is our price. Not money. Not resources, respect. The chamber exploded with argument. Sumin could see species shouting at each other, their translation devices working overtime. This is unacceptable, shouted a representative she did not recognize. We will not be blackmailed. Then don't, Sumin said calmly. Fight your war alone. Humanity will return to Sol system. We have plenty of resources in our own star system. We can be happy there. Can you say the same about fighting the devourers without us? You would abandon the galaxy to suffer? Ventok asked. No, you abandoned us first, remember? You locked us away. You said we were not good enough for your precious council. Well, guess what? We don't need you anymore. We built our own civilization. We developed our own technology. We became strong without you. So if you want our help, you will treat us as equals. Or we go home. An elderly alien, one she recognized from the old records as a member of the original council that rejected humanity, spoke up. This is extortion. We should simply take what we need from them by force. Sumin laughed again. Please try. We've been preparing for war for a century. We've studied every conflict in galactic history. We know your tactics, your weapons, your strategies. And we've designed everything we have specifically to counter council technology. So yes, please try to force us. It will be educational. The threat hung in the air. The council knew humanity had defeated devourer forces. The question was, could they risk making humans their enemy instead of their ally? Ventok raised a pseudopod for silence. Ambassador Han, you must understand our position. To grant full membership to a species we previously rejected would undermine our authority. It would make us appear weak. You are weak, Sumin said bluntly. You're losing a war. Your territory shrinks every year. Your species die by the billions. You need help. We can provide that help. But we will not be second-class citizens in the galaxy we're saving. A new voice spoke up, younger than most of the counselors. My name is Piril. I represent one of the newer species, admitted to the council only 50 years ago. I wish to speak in support of the human proposal. This is irregular, Ventok said. So is this entire situation. Counselors, I have reviewed the original decision to reject humanity. The stated reasons were that they were too violent, too aggressive, too unpredictable. But I have also studied human history. Do you know what I found? The chamber waited. I found a species that defeated diseases we still struggle with. I found a species that survived multiple extinction-level events on their planet. I found a species that went from primitive tools to spaceflight in only 10,000 years. And yes, I found violence. But I also found art, philosophy, compassion, and an unbreakable will to survive. Piril turned to face the other counselors. We rejected them because we were afraid. Not of what they were, but of what they represented. Change, innovation, challenge to our established order. We were comfortable in our superiority, and humans threatened that comfort, so we locked them away and hoped to forget about them. Your point? Asked the elderly counselor coldly. My point is that we were wrong, and our pride has cost us dearly. If we had accepted humanity a century ago, how many of our lost species might still exist? How many worlds might still be inhabited? Our pride made us weak, and it is time to admit our mistake. Silence filled the chamber. Finally, Ventok spoke. We will need time to consider this. You have 3 days, Suman said. After that, our fleet returns to Sol system. Good luck with your war. She cut the transmission. On Earth, Admiral Woojin Park reviewed intelligence reports in his office. He was not alone. General Taeyang Choi, now 97 years old but still sharp, sat across from him. Between them, holographic displays showed devourer movements, council positions, and humanity's own fleet deployments. Suman made her demand, Woojin said. Either they accept us as equals or we leave. Good, Taeyang replied. We should never have to beg for scraps. But if they refuse, we abandon the galaxy to the devourers. Perhaps. Or perhaps the devourers would come for us eventually anyway. Better to fight them here on our terms than to wait for them to arrive at Earth. Woojin pulled up a new report. Speaking of fighting, our science division has discovered something interesting about the devourers. What's that? They're not random. They're following a pattern. They target species with strong psychic abilities first. Species that use mental powers, telepathy, empathy. Those are priority targets, Taeyang frowned. Humans have no psychic abilities. Exactly. As far as the devourers are concerned, we're invisible. They're not hunting us. They're hunting everyone else. Which means the council species are all targets. Every single one. They're psychic beacons to the devourers. But we're not. We're the one species in the galaxy that the devourers don't actively hunt. The war changed the moment humanity entered it properly. Council forces had been fighting defensively for decades, retreating slowly, losing ground bit by bit. The arrival of human fleets changed everything. Fleet Admiral Seokun Im stood on the bridge of the massive carrier Triumph, looking at the tactical display. His fleet consisted of 30 human vessels facing a devourer armada of over 200 ships. By council standards, this was suicide. By human standards, it was just another day. All ships report ready, said his tactical officer Hyun. Good. Transmit the plan to all vessels. We go in 3 minutes. Admiral, Council Command is requesting we wait for reinforcements. Tell them no. By the time reinforcements arrive, the colony on Arcturus 7 will be dead. We move now. The Devourer fleet was in formation around the planet, beginning their bombardment. Millions of aliens were dying down there while the Council debated strategy. Seokun would not let that continue. All ships execute Maneuver Gamma. Let's show them what crazy looks like. The human fleet did not charge forward in a direct line like Council forces would. Instead, they split into 5 groups, each taking a different vector. They accelerated hard, using gravity assist from nearby asteroids and planets to build speed. Then they dove toward the black hole at the edge of the system. Admiral, we're approaching the event horizon. I can see that. Hold course. Council observers watching from a distance saw the human fleet disappear into the black hole's accretion disk, that swirling hell of radiation and twisted space-time where nothing should survive. They assumed the humans had made a fatal error. They were wrong. The human ships emerged on the opposite side of the system, having used the black hole's gravity to slingshot themselves at impossible speeds. They appeared directly behind the Devourer fleet, traveling so fast that the enemy had no time to react. Fire everything. 30 human ships unleashed hell. Railguns fired solid projectiles at relativistic speeds. Nuclear-tipped missiles streaked toward enemy vessels. Conventional explosives followed behind. The Devourers, caught completely unprepared, began dying. 15 confirmed kills. Enemy fleet is breaking formation. Good. Group Alpha, swing around for another pass. Groups Beta and Gamma, engage close range. Delta and Epsilon, protect the planet. The battle became chaos. Human ships danced through the enemy formation like sharks in a school of fish. They moved unpredictably, never staying in one place, never following patterns. Devourer ships tried to target them, but human pilots had trained for this. Taking fire, starboard side. Return fire. All batteries. The Triumph shuddered as Devourer weapons struck its armor, but unlike Council ships that relied on shields, human vessels were built like tanks. The armor held and the ship kept fighting. Enemy mothership identified. It's the big one in the center. All ships converge on the mothership. I want that thing dead. 20 human vessels turned as one and charged toward the largest Devourer ship. It was massive, easily 10 times the size of the Triumph. Its weapons could probably destroy a human ship with one shot. Seohun smiled. Activate the special package. From the bellies of 5 human ships, new weapons emerged. Antimatter warheads, humanity's newest and most dangerous invention. Each one had the explosive power to crack a moon. Firing solution locked. Release in 3, 2, 1, fire. The antimatter missiles streaked toward the mothership. Devourer point defense tried to stop them, but the missiles were too fast, too maneuverable. When they hit, the explosion was visible from the planet's surface. The mothership simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, the next it was gone, replaced by an expanding sphere of energy. The blast wave caught a dozen nearby Devourer ships and destroyed them too. Mother of mercy, Hyun whispered. All ships, finish off the survivors. Leave none alive. The remaining Devourer vessels tried to flee, but human ships were faster. One by one, they were hunted down and destroyed. The battle that should have lasted days was over in 2 hours. Sukun opened a channel to the planet below. Arcturus 7, this is Admiral Im of the Human Defense Fleet. The enemy is destroyed. You're safe now. The response came back in a voice thick with emotion. Human Fleet, this is Governor Thalmon. You saved us. We thought we were dead. Thank you. Just doing our job. Human medical ships are approaching to provide aid. We'll stay in orbit until Council forces can relieve us. Later in the debriefing, Council commanders studied the battle recordings in stunned silence. The maneuver through the black hole was considered impossible. The aggressive tactics were reckless by their standards, and the antimatter weapons were terrifying in their power. How did you survive passing through that radiation? Asked a Council admiral. Better shielding and tougher hulls, Seokun replied simply. We built our ships to take punishment. And the antimatter weapons? We developed them during our isolation. Figured if we ever needed to fight, we should have something that could end battles quickly. The Council admiral looked uncomfortable. These tactics are extremely dangerous. The risk to your crews is unacceptable by our standards. By your standards, you were losing the war. By our standards, we just saved millions of lives. I'll take the risk. News of the victory spread quickly. Other human fleets achieved similar results across the galaxy. At the Battle of Sirius, Commander Bora Han led ground forces that pushed back a Devourer invasion through brutal urban warfare. At the Nebula Offensive, Captain Yaren Bayek's fighter squadrons used hit-and-run tactics to destroy a Devourer supply line. But the war was not without cost. Humans bled, they died, they sacrificed. The Battle of Arcturus became famous not for the victory in space, but for what happened on the ground. Major Bora Han held a defensive position with only 500 soldiers against a Devourer ground force of thousands. The organic monsters came in waves, and Bora's forces fought them back again and again. Major, we're out of ammunition, reported her second officer, Jinwoo. Then we use our fists. We hold this line until every civilian is evacuated. That's another 3 hours. Then we hold for 3 hours. The battle became hand-to-hand combat. Human soldiers fought with knives, clubs, and bare hands against creatures twice their size. They died in droves, but they did not retreat. Every minute they held was another 100 civilians reaching the evacuation ships. Bora's final transmission became legendary. "Command, this is Major Han. We've held for 2 hours and 57 minutes. Civilians are clear. Enemy is overrunning our position. It has been an honor." She paused, then added, "Tell my family I died protecting people who needed protecting. That's all that matters." Then her transmission cut off. She and her entire unit were killed in the final assault, but 20,000 civilians escaped because of their sacrifice. When news reached Earth, 10 billion humans mourned. Bora Han received the highest military honors posthumously. Her story was taught to every soldier, every child, every human who needed to understand what it meant to serve. The Devourers learned something in those battles. They learned that humans did not fight like other species. Council forces retreated when faced with overwhelming odds. Humans did not. Council forces preserved their forces for future battles. Humans threw everything into the present moment. Council forces valued efficiency and calculated risks. Humans valued victory and accepted any cost to achieve it. Dr. Ji-Wan Lee, Earth's leading xenobiologist, made a breakthrough studying captured devourer organisms. She discovered that their biocorruption weapons were essentially hyper-aggressive viruses, and humanity, having evolved on a planet teeming with diseases, had immune systems far more robust than any Council species. "We can create a vaccine," she announced in a broadcast to all Council medical facilities. "It won't be pleasant. The side effects are severe, but it will stop the biocorruption from spreading." The vaccine was painful, causing fever and illness for days, but it worked. For the first time in 50 years, Council forces could survive exposure to devourer weapons. The tide of war began to turn. A Council world was liberated for the first time in a decade. Human Marines and Council forces worked together to drive the Devourers off a planet that had been occupied for years. When the last enemy ship fled, soldiers from a dozen species planted their flags together on the Capitol building. The human flag flew beside Council banners and nobody protested. In fact, many Council species requested that human commanders lead combined operations. They trusted human tactics now. They trusted human courage. But with each victory came grief. Every battle cost human lives. The memorial walls on Earth grew longer every day, filled with names of the fallen. And still humanity fought on. "Why do they do it?" asked a young Council diplomat named Silva, watching human soldiers prepare for another dangerous mission. They could stay in their fortified systems. These are not their worlds they're dying for. An older Council member, one who had voted against humanity's membership, answered quietly, "Because they are exactly what we feared. They are warriors who never learned when to quit. They are heroes who cannot turn away from suffering. They are humanity unchained, and they are magnificent." Silva watched the Devourer armada that approached Sol System was the largest force ever assembled in galactic history. 3,000 vessels, each one a nightmare of organic technology and corrupted space. They emerged from FTL at the edge of the system, their mere presence causing sensor equipment to malfunction from the reality warping effects of their drives. Defense Commander Heijin Cho watched them appear on his displays from his command station on Luna. He was 47 years old, born after the quarantine, and he had spent his entire life preparing for the day when Earth would need defending. He had never imagined it would be like this. "Give me numbers," he said calmly. 3,000 Devourer capital ships. Unknown number of smaller vessels. Estimated total force over 10,000 combat units. His aide, Min Seo, spoke in a steady voice despite the terror of what those numbers meant. "Our forces number 800 human vessels plus 400 Council ships that volunteered to help defend Earth. 1,200 ships against 10,000. The odds were impossible. But Heijin had studied human history extensively. Impossible odds were where humanity did their best work. Activate all defense platforms. Deploy the satellite network. Scramble every fighter we have, and send a message to Admiral Doyen. Tell him the enemy is here." Across the solar system, humanity mobilized. Every ship that could fly joined the defense fleet. Every orbital station activated weapons that had been built during the century of isolation. Mars deployed its own defensive fleet. The asteroid belt mining stations became improvised fortresses. Even the colonies on Jupiter's moons contributed whatever forces they could. And Earth itself became an armed camp. Surface-to-space weapons came online. Cities activated shield generators. Evacuation plans were implemented, moving civilians to underground shelters that could survive orbital bombardment. Admiral Doyen Lee's fleet raced toward Earth at maximum speed, but they were still 3 days away. The defense would have to hold without them. Commander, the enemy is advancing. They're coming straight for Earth. Predictable. They want to take out our homeworld first. They think we'll surrender if Earth falls. Hagen allowed himself a cold smile. They don't understand humans very well. All ships, stand ready. When they enter weapons range, give them hell. The Devourers came in waves. The first wave consisted of 500 ships clearly meant to test the defenses. They entered the outer system near Neptune's orbit, and that's when they met humanity's first surprise. Hidden among Neptune's moons were weapon platforms humanity had built over the past century. They activated simultaneously, launching thousands of missiles, not at the Devourer ships themselves, but at the space around them. The missiles were filled with metallic debris, turning the area into a deadly cloud of high-velocity fragments. The Devourer ships traveling at high speed ran straight into the debris field. Their organic hulls, tough against energy weapons, tore apart against the simple physics of solid objects moving at extreme velocities. 50 ships died in the first minute. First blood to humanity, Hagen said quietly. But they'll adapt. Prepare for the next wave. The next wave was larger and more cautious. 1,000 ships approached in a wide formation, avoiding the debris fields. They entered the inner system near Saturn, and that's when the second surprise hit them. The rings of Saturn erupted with weapons fire. Humanity had hidden entire battle stations within the ice and rock, using the rings as camouflage. Energy weapons and railguns opened fire from point-blank range, catching the Devourers in a crossfire. Keep hitting them. Every shot counts, but the Devourers were learning. They adapted their formation, spread out their ships, and began systematically destroying the hidden stations. The battle for Saturn lasted 6 hours. In the end, humanity lost half their defensive installations, but they took down another 300 enemy ships. The main Devourer force finally reached Earth orbit after 12 days of fighting through the solar system. They had lost over 1,000 ships to humanity's defensive networks, but they still vastly outnumbered the defenders. The final battle was about to begin. All ships, this is Commander Cho, we hold this line. Earth does not fall. Not today, not ever. The response came back from 800 human ships and 400 council vessels. Understood. We stand with Earth. The battle that followed was brutal beyond description. Ships died by the dozens on both sides. The space around Earth became a graveyard of burning wreckage and debris. Human ships fought with desperate courage, ramming Devourer vessels when they ran out of ammunition, using damaged ships as improvised weapons, sacrificing themselves to protect Earth. Captain Mira Bay commanded the destroyer Dauntless in the thick of the fighting. Her ship had been patched together after a dozen battles, held together by welds and determination. When a Devourer cruiser targeted a civilian evacuation transport, Mira made an instant decision. Full power to engines. Ram the cruiser. Captain, we'll never survive that. The transport has 10,000 civilians aboard. We have 300 crew. The math is simple. Do it. The Dauntless accelerated directly toward the enemy ship, firing everything it had. At the last moment, Mira evacuated her crew to the escape pods, then manually piloted the ship into the Devourer cruiser at maximum speed. The explosion destroyed both vessels, but the transport escaped. 300 humans died to save 10,000 civilians. The galaxy watched and wept. The battle raged for 6 weeks. Cities on Earth burned from debris falling through the atmosphere. Orbital stations fell one by one. The defensive fleet was ground down through attrition, but they held, barely. Then the Devourer mothership arrived. It was massive beyond comprehension, larger than Earth's moon, pulsing with sickly bioluminescence. It emerged from FTL directly above Earth's atmosphere and began to descend. If that thing reaches the surface, it's over, Agent said. Every unit capable of flight converge on the mothership. We stop it here or we die trying. Every ship that could still move turned toward the mothership. Human vessels, council ships, damaged fighters held together by emergency repairs, they all charged forward. The mothership's point defense destroyed them by the dozens, but they kept coming. On Earth's surface, cities launched their last defensive missiles. Millions of projectiles streaked into the sky, a desperate attempt to slow the descending nightmare. Some hit, most missed. The mothership continued its descent. Then Lieutenant Yaren Beck, flying a fighter that had lost half its systems, saw an opening. The mothership's ventral surface had a weak point where its organic armor was thinner. One shot, perfectly placed, might reach the reactor core. "This is Lieutenant Beck to all units. I'm making a run. If this works, tell my family I love them. Beck, wait for support. No time. I'm going now." Her fighter accelerated toward the mothership, dodging defensive fire through sheer skill and luck. Her weapons were depleted. Her shields were gone, her engines were failing. But she didn't need weapons. She needed only momentum. Yaren aimed her fighter directly at the weak point and locked the controls. Then she closed her eyes and thought of home. The impact was visible from the surface. Her fighter, traveling at maximum speed, punched through the mothership's armor and detonated its remaining fuel inside the reactor chamber. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the mothership began to glow from within. Explosions rippled across its surface. It stopped descending and began to break apart, massive chunks of organic material falling away. The core reactor went critical, and the entire structure exploded in a blast that lit up Earth's night side like a second sun. The explosion caught 100 Devourer ships in its radius and destroyed them all. The remaining enemy forces, suddenly leaderless, began to retreat. The battle was over. But the cost was devastating. Of 800 human ships that started the battle, only 90 remained operational. 10 billion humans died from orbital bombardment and falling debris. Entire cities were reduced to rubble. The beautiful blue planet that humanity called home was scarred with fires and craters. Heijin Cho stood in the ruins of his command center, looking at casualty reports. 10 billion dead. The number was so large it became meaningless. Each one was a person, a life, a story. And they were all gone. Admiral Doyen arrived 3 days after the battle ended. His fleet had fought their way through Devourer stragglers to reach Earth. He stood beside Heijin on the observation deck, looking down at their wounded world. "We held," Heijin said quietly. "Earth survived." "Yes, but the price was too high. Every price is too high when it's paid in lives. But if we hadn't held, every human would be dead. 10 billion died, but 20 billion survived. That has to mean something." The galaxy mourned with humanity. Council ships arrived with medical supplies and aid. Species that had once rejected humanity now sent their best doctors, their finest engineers, their most skilled rescue workers. They helped dig survivors from the rubble. They helped rebuild. They stood beside humanity in their darkest hour. High Counselor Ventak came to Earth personally, a gesture unprecedented in Council history, the liquid metal being materialized in the ruins of Sol, before a memorial wall that now bore tens of millions of names. "I come to apologize," Ventak said, its voice transmitted to every human on the planet. "Not just for the rejection of long ago. 20 years passed. The scars of the war slowly faded, though they would never completely disappear. Earth rebuilt its cities, replanted its forests, and honored its dead. The blue planet shone again in the light of Sol, beautiful and alive, a testament to humanity's refusal to surrender. The Galactic Council was reformed. Not the old council of proud species maintaining distance from each other, but something new, something better. The Grand Assembly now met in a station built jointly by all member species, orbiting a neutron star at the galactic center. The station was called Unity, and it represented what the galaxy had become. Ambassador Jiho Park, now 93 years old and moving slowly with age, returned to the Grand Assembly chamber. It was not the same place where humanity had been rejected so long ago. That building was dust, destroyed in the war. This new chamber was brighter, more open, designed by human and alien architects working together. He stood at the center of the circular room, surrounded by representatives from 300 species. Some were survivors of the old council. Many were new members, species that had been freed from devourer occupation. All of them looked at the old human with respect. "I stand before you today," Jiho began, his voice still strong despite his age. "Not to speak of the past, though the past is important. Not to demand recognition, though recognition was hard-won. I stand before you to speak of what we have built together." He gestured to the assembled representatives. 20 years ago, this galaxy was dying. Species fell one by one. Worlds burned. Trillions died. The civilized order you had maintained for thousands of years was collapsing. And into that darkness, humanity stepped forward. We did not do it for glory. We did not do it for payment. We did it because it was right. Because when someone is drowning, you pull them from the water. You do not ask if they deserve saving. You do not check if they would do the same for you. You simply help. Jiho paused, looking around the chamber. He saw faces of species that had fought beside humans, species that had lost everything and been given a second chance. Young and old, powerful and weak, all listening. You cast us out because you feared what we were. You were right to fear us. We are aggressive. We are curious. We take risks you would never take. We fight battles you would never fight. We are unpredictable, dangerous, and we never ever give up. You meant all of that as criticism. But you forgot something important. Those same qualities make us survivors, protectors, friends who will bleed for you even when you do not deserve it. You feared the warrior in us. You did not see the hero. An elderly council member, one of the few who had voted against humanity decades ago, stood up slowly. It was the reptilian being who had spoken to Jiho after the original rejection. Its scales were faded now, its movements careful. Ambassador Park, I must speak. I voted against humanity. I argued for your quarantine. I believed you were too dangerous for civilized space. The alien's voice was thick with emotion. I was wrong. Not just wrong, but blind, cowardly. I saw your strength and feared it instead of celebrating it. I saw your courage and called it recklessness. I saw your compassion and ignored it. The reptilian being turned to face the entire assembly. This old one has lived through the rise and fall of empires. I have seen species come and go. And in all my years I have never seen anything like humanity. They are what we should have been. What we could have been, if we had not become comfortable in our superiority. They showed us that civilized does not mean weak. That peace does not mean passive. That advancement does not mean abandoning the qualities that made survival possible. Humanity is dangerous. Thank the stars for that, because danger in the service of others is the highest form of heroism. The assembly rose as one, a gesture of respect that transcended species. They remained standing for a full minute, honoring not just Jiho but all of humanity. When they sat again, Jiho continued. The war changed us all. Before the Devourers, you had forgotten how to fight. You had forgotten that some things are worth dying for. You had become so civilized that you could not imagine barbarism. And when barbarism came for you, you were helpless. Humanity remembered what you forgot. We never lost touch with our savage past. We studied war even in peace. We prepared for conflict even when there was none. You called us paranoid. We called it prudent. And when the war came, we were ready. Jiho pulled up a holographic display showing the galaxy. Green markers indicated thriving systems. Yellow showed recovering areas. There were no red markers anymore. No devourer-occupied territory. No lost worlds beyond hope. This is what we built together. A galaxy where species work as equals, not superiors and inferiors. Where military might protects rather than threatens. Where different approaches to problems are celebrated, not feared. This is the galaxy you rejected us from, and this is the galaxy we saved. A young representative from a species humanity had liberated spoke up. Her name was Lyra, and she had been born in a devourer prison camp. Ambassador Park, my people owe everything to humanity. We were slaves for 30 years. Human soldiers freed us. Human doctors healed us. Human engineers rebuilt our world. How can we ever repay this debt? Jiho smiled gently. You repay it by living well. By building a future worth the sacrifices made for it. By remembering that freedom is not free. And by extending the same hand to others that was extended to you. My species learned these lessons through hardship. We survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and near extinction. Every generation fought for the survival of the next. We never forgot that comfort is temporary, that peace is precious, and that civilization is always one generation away from collapse. We do not ask you to become like us. We ask you to remember what we represent. The idea that no threat is too great, no odds too impossible, no cause too lost, as long as someone is willing to stand and fight. The assembly session continued for hours. New policies were proposed, debated, and passed. Human principles of merit-based leadership were adopted. Military academies now trained officers in both council and human tactics. Research facilities shared discoveries freely. The rigid hierarchy of the old council was replaced with a flexible coalition. Young aliens came to Earth's universities to study. They learned human history, human philosophy, human approaches to problems. Many stayed, making lives on Earth. Human culture spread across the galaxy, not through conquest but through example. Earth's music played on alien worlds. Human art hung in museums light years away. Human stories were translated into hundreds of languages. And everywhere, species looked at humanity and thought, we can be better. We can be stronger. We can be more. But humanity never forgot the cost. The memorial walls grew longer as veterans passed away from age. Each name was a reminder of what had been paid for peace. Admiral Mira Bay, now in her 60s, commanded Earth's defense fleet from a new flagship. The war was over, but humanity remained vigilant. They trained constantly, prepared for threats that might never come, because that was what humans did. They prepared. "Admiral, we're detecting an anomaly at the edge of the system," reported her tactical officer. "Unknown energy signature." Mira felt old instincts activate. "Battle stations. Identify that signature." Moments of tension passed. Then the officer laughed with relief. "It's the colony ship Aurora returning from its mission. They've been exploring beyond the rim for 5 years." Mira relaxed. The colony ships, humanity's new mission, not to conquer the galaxy but to explore it, to find new worlds, new possibilities, new adventures. The human drive that had once been feared was now directed outward, seeking knowledge rather than conflict. "Grant them clearance to dock. I want to hear their reports." The Aurora brought news of 3 new habitable worlds, 2 minor species that requested contact, and mapping data on unexplored regions of space. Humanity was doing what they had always done best. They were pushing boundaries, asking questions, going where others feared to tread. On Earth's surface, in a quiet cemetery in Seoul, a monument stood among thousands of graves. It was simple black stone, carved with names that stretched across its surface in tiny letters. At the top, a single inscription: "They locked us out. We broke back in, not for revenge, but to save them anyway." This is humanity. Tourists from across the galaxy visited the monument. They read the names. They touched the stone with whatever appendages their species possessed. And they wept, because they understood what those names represented. An elderly woman stood before the monument, her white hair blowing in the breeze. She placed flowers at its base as she did every year on this date. Her name was Somin, and her brother's name was carved in the stone. He had died at the Battle of Arcturus, holding a line so civilians could escape. A young alien approached her carefully. It looked like a floating jellyfish, translucent and fragile. "Excuse me, honored elder. I am Final. My family was saved at Arcturus. Your brother was there?" "Yes," Somin said quietly. "He was there. He died so others could live. I am here because of him. My parents, my siblings, my entire clan. We live because humans like your brother stood between us and death." The alien's voice was filled with emotion.